The Super Bowl is not only football's grandest stage for competition, but really, it's the pinnacle for American sports as a cultural event. It's rich with fanfare and glamour, and subsequently, the production of the event is second to none. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that it is a huge revenue generator, not only for the NFL, but also for the city that hosts the big game. I mean, it isn't every day you have tens of thousands of generally affluent people set loose on the local economy, eager to spend their Christmas bonuses. This means there's plenty of incentives for the NFL teams and their corresponding cities to try and host the Super Bowl. But just because the host city rotates from team to team each year, that is not a guarantee that you'll get to see the big game played in your hometown. Whether it's because the city isn't much of a tourist draw, or, maybe because it isn't a super desirable climate for people to gather come February. The fact of the matter is, there are a number of cities that have NFL teams that will never host the Super Bowl. Take Buffalo, for example. As much fun as Buffalo Bills fans appear to have at the team's home games, I think it's safe to say we will never see the proud people of Bills Mafia elbow-dropping one another through flaming tables during a pre-Super Bowl tailgate. At least not at a league-sanctioned event, because knowing the dedication that Bills fans bring to NFL football, they very well may be hosting their own rogue tailgate or something like that. But their degeneracy will not take place in the parking lot of Highmark Stadium, because the Super Bowl will never, ever be played there. It's nothing against the good people of Western New York, but the reality is that not only does Orchard Park completely swing and miss on the amenities and other entertainment draws that the NFL typically likes to have around the Super Bowl, but also the city's infrastructure does not lend itself to a sudden injection of 100,000 people, something that the NFL has strict bylaws around ensuring. Oh, and lest we forget the obvious reality that the climate leaves much to be desired for hosting an outdoor event. I mean, think about it. The average February temperature in Buffalo ranges from 31 degrees all the way down to 19. Not to mention the fact that, on average, Buffalo gets over 5 inches of snow during the month of February. I think that the NFL recognized its mistake hosting an outdoor Super Bowl in a cold weather city when they let New York have it a few years back, and fear of a good old-fashioned snowstorm loomed in the weeks leading up to the game. While they avoided the disaster that would have ensued if Mother Nature did drop a snowstorm on them, the NFL didn't want to tempt fate again. And besides, at least they had the draw of New York City right around the corner. No disrespect to Buffalo, but it's not exactly the metropolis that the Big Apple is. And they don't have a new stadium that the NFL wants to put on display like the Giants and Jets did. Now, before any of you Bills fans out there start to get up in your feelings over this, there is an outside chance that if Buffalo follows through on its goal of building a new climate-controlled stadium in Orchard Park, that the NFL would give them the same treatment that they gave the Giants back in 2014. Which is certainly more than you can say for the folks in Green Bay. Because if you think Buffalo had the deck stacked against them when it comes to hosting a Super Bowl, buddy, let me tell ya, Green Bay takes that to a whole nother level. There is less than 0% chance that we ever see the big game played there. For starters, let's take a look at its population and its climate. The 100-some-odd thousand person city is positioned neatly in the northeastern part of Wisconsin, right near the mouth of the Fox River. So, not only is the city home to less than half as many people as Buffalo, it's also even colder. The average high in Green Bay for February is only 29 degrees, and its average low is 10 degrees. And considering the history that is associated with Lambeau Field, I think it will quite literally be a cold day in hell when the Packers brass crack open the piggy bank and invest in a new domed stadium. You would think that the Packers fans would be behind it. I mean, I'm just saying, if every time I wanted to go see my favorite team play in person, I had to freeze my yams off, I would be begging ownership to get me a climate-controlled stadium. But those cheeseheads love their tradition, and there is no denying that Lambeau Field is a part of that. so I wouldn't expect the court of public opinion to push for a new stadium. And subsequently, nor would I expect the NFL to host its biggest event of the year there. The fact of the matter is that money talks. And not only is Green Bay one of the smallest markets in the NFL, but also all of North American professional sports. The NFL is not going to be making a cold weather exception for them. The league is in the business of many things, but giving charity, unless it overwhelmingly benefits the public perception of its brand, is not one of them. Speaking of things that the NFL doesn't much care for, let's jump over to the New England Patriots and the team's home field, Gillette Stadium, which can get in line with Highmark and Lambeau if it wants to complain about never getting a chance to host the Super Bowl. Gillette runs into a lot of the same issues that the other two stadiums do. The climate does not lend itself to hosting an event that is supposed to be all about the fanfare. On the list of things Gillette Stadium does have going for it is that it's near Boston, which would be an interesting option for all the non-football related hubbub, as it is a lively city with the right infrastructure to host. But the reality is that the days of the Boston Patriots are long gone. These are the New England Patriots, and their stadium itself is a solid 30 miles away from the city center, which poses a load of logistical challenges to the NFL staffers, operators, and teams, as well as the fans attending the game. And the next biggest city, considering Foxborough itself only has around 19,000 people, is Providence, Rhode Island, which is also around 30 miles away. And it doesn't even come close to what the NFL would be looking for as far as setting up shop for Super Bowl week. So while the salty Patriots fans and their long-standing persecution complex might want to think that the NFL's unwillingness to let them host a Super Bowl has something to do with the team and its owners, Robert Kraft, being at odds with Goodell and the rest of the league's office, that just isn't the case. Rather, it's just another cold weather city with an old, non-climate controlled stadium that the NFL wouldn't give a second thought to letting host the Super Bowl. Which, to some degree, is a shame, because it would be fun to watch an area like New England that loves football host the big game. But that being said, it's not the only football-loving city that comes up short in what the NFL is looking for in a host city. Think about some of the other large-sized markets that have still yet to host the Super Bowl. The likes of Philadelphia, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. These are three of the biggest markets that the NFL has. Both Chi-Town and Philly rank in the top 5, 3rd and 4th respectively, behind New York and LA. And D.C. really isn't too far behind them, coming in at 9th overall. And yet, none of these cities, which are among the most popular metropolises in the United States, have hosted the Super Bowl yet. Meanwhile, New Orleans, whose market is not just one of the smallest in the NFL, but again in American sports in general, has hosted the big game 10 times. This goes to show that there is more that goes into a city getting the right to host the Super Bowl than just its population density or its TV market. The NFL has shown repeatedly over the years that there are 3 primary factors that drive its decision regarding where to host the Super Bowl. And let me tell you, warm weather is at the top. The NFL does not want celebrities to watch the game from their mansions, which many of them would do if the game was played in the frigid temperatures of a Chicago or Philadelphia winter. Even DC, which is a little bit milder, still leaves much to be desired in terms of climate. So much so that the NFL's second requirement, an infrastructure that can safely welcome 100,000 visitors for a week, which these 3 cities have, seems to be rendered null. The last-ditch hope for these cities would be if they got in line with the NFL's mission of fully glamorizing the league and built new, state-of-the-art facilities for their teams to play in. Interestingly, this has sort of superseded the other 2 pillars that the NFL considers in its decision-making process, particularly over the last decade, during which the NFL has gotten quite trigger-happy and promising a Super Bowl to any ownership group that can string together a deal to build a new stadium that is to the NFL's liking. The newfound habit of rewarding franchises and ownerships that build new stadiums started with the Cowboys back in 2011, when the curtains were pulled and Jerry World, aka AT&T Stadium, was revealed. Unfortunately for the culture of the sport, if you will, this leaves a lot of diehard football-loving cities and fan bases out in the lurches when it comes to hosting the Super Bowl, particularly in the Midwest, where the cities are at the mercy of harsh winters and lack the allure of the greater New York area. Think Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Kansas City. Heck, even Pittsburgh qualifies here. All the city's hopes of hosting the Super Bowl are really no better than a hope and a prayer, particularly for the latter two, Pittsburgh and Kansas City. This may seem rather counterintuitive because they are huge football cities and would likely be able to drum up the support needed to get a stadium renovation off the ground. But cold weather football is just such a part of their identity, and Arrowhead and Heinz Field are both rich with tradition, much of which is built around that identity. So I wouldn't expect either franchise to bend the knee to the NFL and set up a climate-controlled stadium, like the Vikings did a few years back, particularly because both franchises have the rare distinction of not only being billion-dollar corporations, but also bizarrely a family heirloom of sorts that have been passed down for decades now. And I think it is much less likely to see an organization like Kansas City or Pittsburgh essentially cower to the NFL and build a new stadium because the operators have such a deep emotional attachment to their city, their stadium, and really what has become the culture of their organization. As far as Cleveland and Cincy are concerned, well, if they really wanted to host, they need to go the Minneapolis route, meaning it's time for ownership to cozy up to some local politicians and get to work on building a state-of-the-art facility. Otherwise, these two Ohio State cities have no shot at hosting a Super Bowl anytime soon. But are there any other NFL cities that you think will never host a Super Bowl? Did we miss anyone? And do you think any of these cities will beat the odds? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps it a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.